shelter, so that's good. You think does that sailor? I did cause big colors that well, this cat hangs out out here in Tess. She needs to be a lonely cat. She doesn't get along with She would? She agrees you?
Tail up, you know, how are you?
They're always good with our yeah. Well, this cat was adopted. This isn't a girl. I can tell that she's happy home. Yeah, she's not afraid to come inside or to pet her. She knows to ask me for food, so and she knows to ask me about him. So it's a testament to her intelligence.
Our dog's smart enough when he knows that he knows you become bug, you know.
Yeah, it's your turn.
We asked him what kind of bridge you get it on. Some kind of emulsion. Water and cement here, special grade, stone dust. It's a different kind of a seal.
My neighbor.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an historic town meeting. Pretty excited about what's going on here tonight. Before I call the meeting to order, there's a couple of administrative things we need to take care of first. I want to make sure you're aware that last night I decided to take the town website down. We had to do that because there was legislation passed by the state that required us to post all notices of meetings, all agendas, all minutes within 7 days. And as many of you know, our website is maintained by a volunteer, someone who gives a great deal of his own personal time to do that. And I didn't feel like it was reasonable for us to expect someone to dedicate that kind of time to our website. The good news is that we've already started several months ago developing a new website. That website's probably going to roll out in about 45 days. And it will do everything the state requires and more. But once this legislation went into effect, I wanted to make sure that the town was not going to be vulnerable to non-compliance with state law. So last night we shut the website off. But I looked at the prototype of the new website that's coming out, and it's going to be fantastic. It's really impressive beginning, and so we'll finish that up within 45 days, I think. But I wanted to make you aware of that. And I also wanted to say thank you very much to Vic Vesnager. He has just done a fantastic job for this town for so long, and it is just time for the town to bring that into town hall. Now, before we call the meeting to order, we're going to have Peter Silman come up here and just kind of talk about the administration of virtual town meeting, how this is working. But I also want to say welcome to Ed Jatella, our representative So, always glad to have you here, Ed. Peter?
Thank you. Great to be here.
Good evening. Welcome to this first virtual town meeting that was approved by the annual town meeting back in May. This is the first week under the evidence or the decision that was made at that meeting. We can hold up to 3 of these before we have to go back to the town meeting to decide whether we want to do more of it. There is a dedicated team that's been working to make this possible. I just wanted to quickly introduce them. We have Selectman Robin McKenney back there with Will Spang, who are operating the switchers and the laptop. And we have Jay McKenney over here operating the camera. And they have been terrific. If we could use a couple of more volunteers, because if one of them is sick when we have a virtual town meeting, we're going to be in trouble. So if you know anybody who would be willing to volunteer, that would be much appreciated. The meeting tonight is also part of a UConn-sponsored investigation into participatory democracy. You can contribute to that investigation by filling out this yellow questionnaire, which I will hand out. And if you would please return it to me at the end of the meeting, that would be appreciated. It will provide the data for the UConn-sponsored study, so your participation would be greatly appreciated. If you're very much interested in the conditions under which you're filling out this questionnaire, I posted them in the back there under the clock, and it's one of those official bureaucratic things that you have to go through. If you're interested, it's there for your reading. If you have questions or comments about the virtual town meeting, either the technology or the procedures that we use, we would be very much interested in them. And if you would send those to me via email, that also would be greatly appreciated. Beyond that, thank you very much for your participation tonight. Bob?
Okay, now I'll call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is to elect a moderator. I'll take nominations.
Nominate John Butts.
Second.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Nominations are closed. All in favor of Mr. Butts?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Butts.
Mr. Ross. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who are home this evening or watching via television, if you are registered to participate remotely, you will have received 5 separate emails from the town of Salem earlier today. And those have subject lines of present, no, yes, point of order, and speak. At this time, anyone who wishes to participate as a remote participant should highlight the present email and simply reply to it. The subject line will say present, and our computer operator will know that you are at home listening and watching this evening. After that, those of you who are at home who wish to speak when the time is right, highlight the speak email and respond to it with your comments. If you have a question or point of order, highlight the point of order email, state your point of order in the body and reply to it. And when it comes time for the votes that we will be taking, you highlight the yes or no vote and reply to that email. We do have about 25 people who are pre-registered to participate, but 10 of them are here this evening, so. Ironically, despite what the New London Day said this morning, we have a larger turnout than normal for this type of town meeting. That's an interesting subtext of Peter's doctoral thesis. The second order of business for a traditional town meeting, and we do wish to make this as much as possible like a standard bricks and mortar town meeting. The second order of business always is to appoint a clerk of the meeting, and as Pat Crisanti, our town clerk, is present, the moderator will ask her to serve as clerk, and her first role is to read the notice of the meeting. I know it's been up here, I know it's been out on the airwaves for a little while, but I am going to ask Pat to read it this evening and also the posting notice.
All right. This is the warning. Town of Salem special town meeting. To whom it may concern, I, Robert T. Ross, first selectman of the town of Salem, do hereby certify that on September 18, 2008, I caused a warning to be prepared for a special town meeting to be held on Wednesday, October 1st, 2008 at 7 o'clock p.m. at the Salem Town Office Building, 270 Hartford Road. The warning was signed by the Board of Selectmen and printed in the legal section of the day, a newspaper having general circulation in the town of Salem. On September 18, 2008, I posted a copy of the warning on the town bulletin board and deposited a copy of the town clerk for public scrutiny. Dated in Salem, Connecticut, this 18th day of September 2008, signed Robert T. Ross, first selectman. And then the notice. The electors and citizens qualified to vote at the town meeting of the town of Salem are hereby duly notified and warned that a special town meeting of the town of Salem will be held at the Salem Town Office Building, 270 Hartford Road, on Wednesday, October 1st, 2008, beginning at 7:30 p.m. for the following purposes. Number 1, consider and act on an amendment to the ordinance concerning tax relief for the elderly and disabled. Number 2, consider and act on a grant for a multi-purpose path in the amount of $50,000. And number 3, consider and act on a $250,000 steep grant for the transfer station. Pursuant to the town charter, this item will be submitted to a referendum vote and an adjourned special town meeting to take place on Wednesday, October 8, 2008, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. for a yes or no vote by paper ballot at the Salem Town Office Building, 270 Hartford Road. Robert T. Ross, Richard J. Acefalo, James D. Fogarty, Ann M. Crodell, Robin M. McKenney. Dated in Salem, Connecticut, the 17th day of September 2008.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So we have 3 items of business this evening, which can be considered. It's sort of a mixed bag. The first item is something that we can act on tonight and pass or reject. That is to amend our ordinance on tax relief to the elderly and disabled. The second item, when we get to it, is a financial matter in which the town is being asked to spend $50,000 to build phase one of the recreational path. But it's my understanding that the entire $50,000 is reimbursable by the state by a grant that has already been approved. We merely have to appropriate the money and authorize its expenditure so we can actually receive the grant. And we can act on that tonight. The third item is like the second item in that we're being asked to appropriate and authorize the expenditure of money for a town project, this time for transfer station repairs. And again, we'll get all the money back by a state grant. But because the amount is $250,000, it exceeds the limit set in the town's charter for action by a town meeting alone, and therefore it will be adjourned this evening before we leave here to a referendum to be held 1 week from today on these premises, 270 Hartford Road, for a paper ballot. Okay, so going back to item number 1, we have had for some time an elderly taxation and relief review committee working diligently to review the town's current ordinance for tax relief for the elderly and disabled. And they have come up with some proposals which require that certain provisions of the current ordinance be repealed and amended by the institution of new language. And so at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to repeal current sections 4, paragraph 2, and section 5, paragraph 4 of the town's ordinance concerning tax relief for the elderly and disabled, and enact new section 4, paragraph 2, and section 5, paragraph 4, as recommended by the Elderly Taxation Relief Review Committee.
So moved as stated.
Motion by Robert, by Mr. Green. Is there a second? Second. A second by Mr. Asafela. The chair would like to recognize somebody from the committee to put into plain English what I just said.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Dana Betty. Would you like to have the podium?
Sure.
Feel free.
And then with the presentation, you will follow. So while he's giving the presentation, oh, there it is, that was fast. My name is Dana Abetti, and I'm a member of the committee that Bob Ross appointed to review the current elderly taxation review program. Along with myself, I work with John Dolan, George Householder, Joe Bosage, and Frank Soroka, who was our chair, and we work with Norm Wood, also the town tax assessor. Next page, please. A little background about what we were working on is that Bob Ross, the first selectman, did pull us together to get us to talk about and ask questions about the current program, about whether it's fair to the town's senior citizens, and how does our ordinance compare to the relief provided by other towns that are near us and that are similar. He also wanted to make sure that we addressed the question of whether this would have a big negative impact on the town. So we needed to look at that. What is the financial impact of our recommendations? After we reviewed these questions and reviewed what other towns are doing, we made some recommendations. And we forwarded those to the Board of Finance, and the Board of Finance approved our recommendations. We looked at a variety of different potential scenarios before we finalized our proposal, and we'll share that information with you. And then it's your turn to decide if you agree with us on whether this proposal can go into meeting. I'll give you a little information, next slide please, about the current town relief program. I have a good director back here. The current ordinance has two different components. One component is for Salem townspeople who are also eligible for the state program, which is also called the Circuit Breaker program. So these people are eligible for state relief as well as town relief. The other group of people are Salem-only relief people. So these people do not qualify for the state program, but they qualify for town relief only. The difference being that the Salem-only people the only reason that they don't qualify for the state program is that their income is up to $10,000 more than the maximum income for the state program. Under the circuit breaker program, those participants have town relief of a minimum amount of $150. They have maximum relief from the town of $1,250. And the credit that they get is based on a sliding scale pegged to their total annual income. And right now, the maximum joint income for a household is $36,500, and for a single household, it's $29,800. And that's something that is reviewed by the state on an annual basis, and the state does make adjustments generally in October of each year. So what the town does is match the relief that the state grants. That's for the circuit breaker people who also have town relief. Now, the people who only have relief from the town have a minimum amount of $50. So if they qualify, the minimum that we give them is at least $50. The maximum relief that the town gives them today is $250. And I already mentioned that the maximum income that these people can earn, and that's total income, is $10,000 more than the maximum for the circuit breaker participants. And the maximum is also, the town relief is no more than 10% of the tax levy for a couple, and no more than 5% for an individual. Whereas the state program for the circuit breakers, the state program does provide between 10% and 50% relief. And right now we have 28 participants who receive town relief as well as state relief. So 28 participants in the circuit breaker and town program. And we have 7 people who are receiving Salem only relief. Next slide, please. So the approach that our committee took was to compile information about the current participation, which we reviewed with Norm, the town assessor. And we performed a comparative analysis of 37 towns, which we felt were fairly comparable to Salem. We found that 23 towns currently offer tax relief to their senior citizens, whereas 14 did not. And Salem was very fair on income requirements when we compared ourselves to the other towns. And what I mean by very fair is that only 8% of other towns were equal to or greater than the income requirements that we have. So that's favorable to our senior citizens. We were more generous than some of the other towns. We were fair on the maximum credit. And what I mean by that is that 35% of other towns were equal to or greater than our maximum credit. So we were closer to the middle of the pack on the maximum credit that we allow our senior citizens. But we had the least favorable minimum credit, whereas if we decided somebody was eligible for relief, we would go as low as $50, and the other towns were closer to, the median was $200. So that's the midpoint for the other towns, whereas we were much lower than that. Next slide, please. So after we reviewed this information, we decided to propose the following changes. To the state circuit breaker participants who get town relief, we want to increase the minimum from $150 to $300. So if we think they deserve some sort of tax relief, we felt that we should at least give them $300. And we thought that that would be fair to apply across the board, that anybody who qualifies for relief should get at least $300. For the state circuit breaker participants, we wanted to increase the maximum to 75% of the tax levy. So in no case can we ever go above 75%, because if we do, then the town is required to put a lien against the property, and we don't want to get into that in this town. For the Salem-only folks, we want to increase the maximum amount to $500. And again, we can't go above 75% for this group of people either, for the same reasons. We also want to increase the program, the benefit, to 110%, where today we just match what the state gives. We want to increase that to 110%. So it is a modest increase, but we'd like to do that for our senior citizens who qualify. And for the Salem-only relief, we want to align it to the relief provided by the state for married couples in the highest tax bracket. So, as I mentioned earlier, the state provides a sliding scale relief. The least amount that they provide is 10%. We'd like to at least make sure that we're providing that much. And of course, making sure that we meet the minimum of 300 as well. Does anybody have questions about the proposed changes at this point? Is that pretty clear? Okay. Next slide, please. Are there any questions from the internet? Just double checking.
I have a question.
Okay.
Under the old state numbers there at 10%, that suggests to me that somebody's tax could be $12,000 a year on the property. Is that correct?
No, actually, because the state goes up to 50% as well. Is that what you're questioning, the 10%?
Yes.
Yeah. No, the state does go up to 50%.
But it could be 10%. And up to $12,000.
I suppose it could be. Sure. Yeah, you're right. I haven't seen that.
So somebody could be owning property that has a local tax of $12,000 in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. That's, yeah, I didn't.
Based on income.
Right. Yeah, the relief is really based on income.
I understand that,
Okay.
but we're talking value of property.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
Dana, these tax credits that you're talking about, this is not to be confused with setting aside tax due, where the taxes that would not be paid are set aside, and then when the property is sold, probate or sold, then those taxes come forward and are paid.
That's correct. It's
Okay.
not to be confused with that.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Is there anything, the definition of income, is there anything unusual in that definition?
No, it's based on total income.
Taxable or just total income?
Total income. Any other questions? So if you could go to the next slide, please. The summary of impact. This shows a little information about the financial side. The current average annual relief that we're providing our senior citizens is $525. And the proposed, if our proposal is adopted, that would change to about $713, depending on the participants and their taxes assessed. The estimated annual impact to the town currently, the current cost, based on last year's information, was a little over $18,000. If this goes into effect, the total cost to the town would go up to about $25,000, which is a difference of around $6,500. So it's not a huge impact to the town. So any questions on this information? Yes.
I managed to get a little bit confused. My understanding is that the state is for, when the state provides money for the same purpose, I've got the feeling that the total amount of state money is much larger than the amount that we are putting in. Does that make sense to you?
The total amount by the state,
This is the cost of Salem.
right,
There's state of Connecticut money coming into Salem residents.
that's true.
Do you have an estimate of what that?
Of how much the state reimburses us?
Yes.
I don't have that information.
I think it'd be pretty comparable to the 18,000 because we're matching.
And it would just be less than the 3 people who don't participate in the
Right.
state.
Because there are some people that don't qualify for the state, but will still qualify for
For the local. Right, so it would be in addition to this 18,000. This 18,000 is just the local program itself.
And you're saying the state amount is roughly the same type of number?
It'd be a little bit
Close.
less.
It's not half as much or twice as much?
No, and the reason is that there are only 3 people who don't participate in the state program, so it would be those 3 people, we would just subtract their relief from this amount. And actually, sorry, it's 7 people, so we would subtract the 7 people. So it wouldn't be a whole lot to this. Yes?
Can this be combined with other relief on taxes for individual properties?
I don't know why it wouldn't, but the total amount of relief would still have to be the 75%. couldn't go over the 75%.
But there's relief that affects the actual tax itself that some properties get. What come to mind is some of the farm relief properties who have a reduction in their property tax because they are farms. And so they could get this as well as that type of relief.
As far as I know, they'd be able to get both of those reliefs, but again, I think the 75% would have to hold to prevent a lien. Does that make sense?
No. Well, let me give an example. If a property X was normally valued at $100,000, and it happened to be a property that was allowed to be valued at a lesser value because it's a certain kind of property, like farm, that it might be valued at $50,000, and the tax is going to be on the $50,000, not on the $100,000.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So then it wouldn't be relief, it would just be on the front end of the process of more of a valuation.
But it's still relief. The individual property owner
Yeah.
is getting relief in two ways.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, this, and our 75% cap would apply to more of the back end type of relief.
If I could step in for just a second, Dana, and ask everybody who's speaking to keep your voices up, because for the audience we have but one pickup microphone. And secondly, especially when someone other than the moderator is recognizing speakers, if you could identify yourselves, it would be appreciated. And in response to the last little interchange here, I'll really offer a point of order on that. There's a subtle distinction between the two types of, and I will say for the first and last time, two types of tax relief that you're describing. The assessment of land based on farm or forestry is an assessment relief based upon the status of the land, irrespective of who owns it. The tax relief that's being discussed this evening relates to any type of property, but it's based upon the status of the property owner. So that's the big distinction between the two types of relief. One affects the assessment, the other affects the actual taxes that are collected. They're two completely different sets. They may overlap, but they're two completely different sets, two different programs. Are your slides done?
Our slides are
Your
done.
slides are done.
Are there any other questions?
We have a point of order, I believe, from home. Could I see what that is, please?
The sound is blocked. Oops.
Okay. Thank you. We'll start shouting. Are there any questions or comments from home? Anyone wish to speak to this issue, please send your emails now. Does anyone in the room wish to speak to the issue? Any questions or comments?
Just a clarification.
Mr. Jogan.
Jim Fogarty. I think it would be helpful to indicate who is eligible. I think this is not for every person under a certain income. It's for other portions of this ordinance relate to.
Yes, unaffected portions of the ordinance are even in the title, and they refer to the elderly and disabled. So what's the threshold for elderly?
It's age 65.
65, okay. Is that one or both, or one of 10 property owners, all occupants, no occupants?
Would you like me to read the eligibility section?
Is it long?
No.
Good. Then yes.
Should I come up there?
Why don't you try from there? This will be,
Okay.
we'll call it the sound check.
Okay. Okay, I'll stand. I feel like I'm inquiring.
How you go?
An eligible homeowner or couple is one who is 65 years of age or over at the close of the preceding calendar year, or whose spouse residing with said person is 65 years of age or over at the close of the preceding calendar year, or who is 60 years of age or over and the surviving spouse of a taxpayer qualified in Salem under this ordinance at the time of his or her death.
And we've been living with that for a number of years now. Good. Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments?
There is another point of order.
Any point of order up here? All right, what do we have?
I don't know if that was.
Difficult to hear questions from people in the audience. Please have them give their names and repeat the question. We seem to be going right along here in parallel. I'm thinking like people at home. Maybe I'll phone it in next time. So do please speak up and speak slowly and behave yourself. Any other questions or comments here in the audience? Okay, Mr. Seelman.
Move the question.
Okay, the question has been moved, which is, that's a motion to cut off debate. And so we're going to have a procedural vote here for those of you at home. You don't have to vote, but I'm going to give you 1 minute this time to vote yes or no. If you want to keep talking, vote yes. If you're ready to vote on the main question, if you want to move on and vote on the main question, vote yes. If you want to continue talking, vote no. I'm going to give you 1 minute from now to do this. You don't have to vote. I'm going to ask for a voice vote here in the room to move the question in just a minute. And then, assuming that the motion to quash debate is approved, we'll move to the main motion shortly thereafter.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
How are you going to combine a voice vote with the votes coming in on the internet?
Well, the way we're working this is the votes are coming in and they're being tallied right behind you by the machine, and they're kept secret. And then because I'm giving weight to those who do come to the meeting, I'm going to have a voice vote here. But I'm going to reserve judgment. At the instant the voice vote is done, Mr. Spang will put the tabulation on the screen. If it agrees with my call of my read of what the vote was in the room, then I'll announce the result. If I'm confused, I'll ask for a show of hands in the room. It's been working okay so far. Will, do we have any votes coming in? Okay. Remember, a yes vote is to close debate and move on to the next vote, which is the question itself. A no vote means we still have the question. And so I'm going to ask those in the room, all those in favor of moving the question, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. And Will, if we're ready, can I see the votes from home? This is the exciting part. And so the question answers itself. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to the questions. And again, for those at home, that's actually the number I have. There's only 8 people who are not in the room tonight who are eligible to vote. And they all voted within a minute. And so I'm going to give you, again, a minute to vote yes or no on the main question. A yes vote is to revise the ordinance as described by Ms. Abetti. A no vote is to leave the ordinance the way it is. And you can begin your yes or no votes from now, please. And then we'll have a voice vote here, and we'll see how the tabulation works. We first thought it would take 3 to 5 minutes to bring in the votes from home, and we're finding that it's quicker than that. That's pretty good participation. We have votes coming in, Will?
Yes.
How many do we have?
9.
Okay. Our voting rule is vote by one. There can not possibly be more than 9, I don't think. So I'll call for the question here in the room. All those in favor of the ordinance amendments as proposed, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And all opposed, please say no. And may I see the numbers, please?
Uh-oh.
We're gonna look at that. I can recount here, there may be 9 people. There may be 9 people out there.
There are 18 people, or 16 people watching, not everybody has voted.
Okay.
That's just for clarification.
All right, thank you. Okay. All right, so we have 16 eligible voters out there this evening. All right, so the ordinance is adopted, and it's thanks to the committee for your good work. Moving on to item number 2, which is to appropriate funds for the recreational path between the Salem School and the recreational field off of Brown Hill Road. Again, this is something we can vote on tonight. It is my understanding that the appropriation is 100% reimbursable by the state of Connecticut by a grant, and it's already been approved. It is simply awaiting a receptacle in the town to be paid into. And so at this point, a motion would be in order to appropriate and authorize the expenditure of $50,000 for phase 1 of the multi-purpose path between the Salem School and the recreational fields on Round Hill Road. Said expenditure to be reimbursed by a state grant. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Gloria Clover. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Sue Spang, all over the room. Is someone here from the Recreation Committee who would like to explain what this is all about? I recognize Robin McKinney.
I'm chair of the Salem Path Committee, and it's actually a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen. And Robin, we have a slideshow tonight, and it's going to go into a little bit of the history of the path. It will go into our goals for the path, but most importantly, it's going to go into what we plan on doing with $50,000 that we'll hopefully receive tonight. So Robin's going to give a slide, and then we'll take questions after.
Just while we're waiting for the PowerPoint to come up, just a little history. We have a committee that's been meeting for a year, quite a while now. And it's a really great committee because there's a very diverse membership. We have people from many different boards and commissions. There are people who work in the school. So it turns out to be a committee with a lot of different viewpoints represented, and I think it's allowing us to get a lot done and to look at this path in a lot of different ways. So it's kind of fun to be honest with you.
Robin, could you speak up a little louder, please?
Yes, sorry. What I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about our goals for the path and then how we hope to fund it. So when we are looking at this path, what we're hoping to do is to, in the long term, create a series of paths throughout Salem that would connect various parts, like from the Gad Boys over to the recreation complex, and maybe even further out onto Round Hill eventually. We're not starting with that big picture, we're starting a little smaller than that, but that's kind of like our long-term plan and what we're looking forward to doing. We hope as a long-term goal that this will promote economic growth in the town. We're hoping that as people come to our town to use this path, they'll stop off in town, they'll buy things, Salem will become more of a destination place for people to come and visit. What we really also want to do is we want to think about making a safe place for our families and our children and our friends to all go out, walk together, have some recreation time. Nobody feels comfortable really biking or walking on 85. We don't have a choice, but it's not comfortable, and certainly we don't feel comfortable sending children out there or taking them to school or something. So we're really looking to have a nice, safe place long term where we can go. And the ultimate goal in anything like this, if you're really trying to improve the quality of life for the people who live in this town, I mean, that's what it's really all about if you look at the big picture. So these are the kinds of things we're thinking about as we're moving forward and we're trying to do this plan. And I can't actually see my slides from up here, so you have to forgive me if I look down every now and then. What we want to do in the short term that we think will benefit Salem residents, since we can't do the whole plan all at once, is to connect some of the key points in town. For instance, the school with the recreation complex, so that if children were going from school to soccer practice, instead of maybe running laps, they could run that, and warm up on their way over to the field. They would be supervised. We're not suggesting that we just send kids off willy-nilly, but it certainly would be nice. We wouldn't have to have buses to take them over, and it would be promoting the fitness that we all think is really, really important. One of the things that we really think about is great about this path and how it will benefit all residents is that it's not just for one age group. We don't want this just for school children, we don't want it just for retirees. We want this path to serve all the people in our town, from the person who's pushing a stroller to the person who's in a wheelchair. So when you think about this path, don't think about just, some jock out there running or somebody biking. We really, really are targeting every single person in this town, from the youngest to the oldest. We want to try to accommodate. So that's a really important goal for us. Another really great thing about having a path like this is that it preserves open space, but for active recreation. And we all know, we've seen surveys, we've talked a lot about it at different meetings, the rural quality of this town is very important to people. We want to maintain open space. This is a great way to do it and feel good about it, because not only is it going to be beautiful and scenic, but we're using it. It's not just sort of sitting there doing nothing. So people can feel very, very good about that. And I just think it's a really nice thing, because if we have this path, it gives us an opportunity for one more place where people can meet and do something physical. Maybe you don't play baseball, but maybe you would love to go out with a group of people and take a hike on a Sunday afternoon. So it's another really a nice way that this could benefit our residents. It also kind of benefits our town, though. I mean, we're not just looking at how does it benefit people, but we're looking at how is this going to help the people who are in our town, like our businesses. And again, like I said before, if people are driving in, they're coming here, they buy water bottles, or they take their kids out for ice cream afterwards, or they start to know that Salem has a couple of really kind of nice restaurants where you can go for lunch with your family. This is going to have a benefit for all of our business owners in the long term. Another great thing about this path is, if you're familiar with where it is, and if you're not, we'll sort of show you in a minute. It does go behind the school. And we've talked to people in the school. We've surveyed science teachers and language arts teachers, and they're really excited because having this path within walking distance from the school, there's like a little spur that goes down to the main path, means that teachers can take their kids out there. And if they're doing water quality units in science, they don't have to go to the 8 Mile River or something. They can walk right out in the backyard and take water samples right there. And so it's really meaningful for the kids. It's immediate. It's right there. And there are numerous ties to the curriculum. So the teachers at the school are really excited about having this opportunity as well. We also think that this is very attractive to potential homeowners. If you are a person looking to move into this town and you're looking what are the amenities that they have in Salem, knowing that there's a bike path where you could take your kids on a Sunday or a Saturday, or you yourself could walk your dogs or ride your horse, is very attractive to people. So we think that that's another really good benefit to our town. And of course, again, I just want to emphasize it. Again, it encourages us protecting our natural resources, doing something good for the town and protecting it at the same time. This path is very consistent with the goals, the long-term goals that we have adopted for our town. It's consistent with the municipal land use plan, the plan of conservation and development, the open space plan. All of these documents have provisions for some sort of recreational multi-purpose path. So this plan is certainly not inconsistent with the vision and the voted upon vision, I would add, of our town. For those of you who are not really sure, I hope you can see this here. People at home might not be able to see it as well, but the path right now, phase 1, starts up here near Round Hill Road. It kind of cuts around back behind Zemco, and if you look for a point of reference, this is the school over here. The blue thing is the spur from the school down to the main path. It goes out here by the Robinson property, and it comes kind of meanders out and ends at Musicville, where there will be a parking area. So just to give you sort of an idea of the scope of the very first phase, this is where we're concentrating our energy right now, is trying to get that part of the path done.
You go over that
Show me where the
again.
ball fields are here.
Round Hill Road, this is up here where the soccer and the ball fields are.
Yeah.
Town Hall over here.
And where does the red line go to?
This was an alternate route where we were talking about coming out before on Round Hill Road. We actually ended up deciding to kind of go this way instead, because we didn't want to outlet kids onto Round Hill Road. Maybe down in the future, maybe we go that direction, but we're not quite there yet. I don't know, Sue, if you have anything to add to that.
That is a possibility at some point in the future. If you go out onto Round Hill Road, there is an area that you could provide parking. And it's possible that at some point you could actually have a bike lane on Mountain Hill Road that could possibly go up to the Central Pond, and that would allow people to go to the pond and bike and walk through there. So that's what the thinking was on that particular spur.
That gives you an idea of generally where we want to start. And you know, it's a nice walk, and if you were interested, you could go out and walk it right now, even though the path is not finished. It's a nice, I would call it a footpath, probably out there, so you're feeling like you want to have a beautiful fall walk. You should go check it out. We even have maps we could give you. So, and it's March. It's pretty well March. So of course the question is, you know, that always comes to people's mind. You start thinking about cost. How much is a mile of this kind of a path going to really cost us? And you know, how are we going to pay for this? Is the town going to be expected to fund something like this, which is clearly an expensive proposition? And you know, what we're looking at, our estimates give us about, we're thinking between $600,000 and $800,000 for a mile. And you know, we think our best guess and our best estimates, which would make us think that the town would fund probably about 20% of that, probably like matching grants. So, you know, then you sort of have to ask the question is, how, you know, how is this all going to get funded? The town's only funding 20%. Where's that other 80% to actually be, you know, coming from? Where's all this money going to come from? So we as a PAC committee have a real commitment to finding outside sources of funding. We're looking at volunteers, and we've already had a lot of people sign up and say, you know what, I'll come in, I'll clear. This means a lot to me. When we were out at Memorial Day, we had like 80 people sign up to say, hey, we're really interested in this, and we're so interested, you know, call us when you're going out and we'll cut brush or we'll help you. So there's definitely an interest in volunteers. Service projects, the scouting organizations in town are very interested in having kids do Eagle Scout projects. The Girl Scouts would like to come out and do some projects. So those leaders feel this is a wonderful opportunity for the kids to give back to their town and to really contribute in a way that's going to be meaningful to the town and to them personally. So we do have that interest. You know, fundraisers and work in kind are certainly other ways we could do it. We've even talked about having an organization like the Library's Friends of the Library, you know, Friends of the Patch, which we think would be really a very good thing to do. I think would help us to promote this project. And you know, we would not turn down any donations that anybody wants to make. But I think the big thing we're looking at right now is probably grants. And really the reason why we're actually here tonight. We did receive a $50,000 grant recently. And what we're coming to you for is an appropriation. So basically, how this grant is managed, and I had to go out and think about this a little bit to kind of wrap my head around it. We received the grant, and basically the state has that money, they hold that money. And the way that it works is that we have to ask the town for an appropriation of that $50,000 that we have been granted. If we get that $50,000, if it's approved, it will be put in a capital account. Whenever the Bike Path Committee buys something, so if we go out and buy wood or conduits or something like that, piping, then we take the money from that account and we pay for it. Then we send the invoice to the state. They reimburse whatever the cost was. It's 100% reimbursable. So if we spend $3,000, we send them our invoices and they return the $3,000. And that money then goes back into the general fund. So that all the money is returned. It's just that, you know, you have to almost think that this $50,000 is like working money. You need the money to be able to get the money. Does that make sense? Does anyone have a question? Am I explaining that so that you can, it's clear? So really, it's not costing the town anything, but we have to ask for this appropriation in order to be able to spend that grant. So, and then when we do get the money and we do get to spend the grant, we'll be very excited because we've already had the engineers in and we're not jumping the gun, but we're excited to move forward. And we have some plans. We want to put 2 permanent crossings in. Now these are some very wet areas near Musicville Road. And in order to make the path a little bit more comfortable for people to walk on, we want to get those crossings in there right away. The other thing we want to do is have some parking at Musicville Road so that if people do want to enter on the Musicville Road side, they will have a safe place where they can park. And when you come out, we want it to be safe. People will have a good line of sight leaving our parking area. Certainly don't want anybody getting hurt, you know, going to exercise. And then with whatever we have left, we're going to build an actual part of the path coming from Mount Hill Road. So that's our big plan for this first chunk of money. We've already got the engineering going, we're all really excited, we're talking about materials, so we're feeling very excited and good about this. And I guess the kind of thing I want to close with is that sometimes we even say this, oh, it's so much money and it's going to take a long time to get, $600,000, but the important thing is we kind of call it like an as-you-go kind of a project. The whole thing doesn't have to be funded or doesn't have to be finished in order for people to use it and enjoy it. You could go on the path tomorrow. The more we do, the more finished it will look. But even as we're working, even if it takes us 5 years to finish this path, over those 5 years, people will be able to use it. But really, frankly, the more people use it and walk on it and trample it down, the better this path will be for everybody, and it'll probably be maybe a little easier when we go in and try to do some of that work. So it seems a little long-term when you think about it, but I think that during that time, we'll really get a lot of good use out of it and enjoy it. And that's pretty much it for what I wanted to share with you. Certainly, if you have any questions, I think pretty much the entire community is here, and we'd be happy to answer them.
I have two. I'm very interested in getting maps for the town clerk's office. Because I have Walden maps and they go like hotcakes.
Okay.
So if I could get it on like an email, I could make them up and I wouldn't have to bother somebody to have them there.
Okay.
That's my first thing. And also the second thing is, what's the length of that red line?
Are you
In
talking about-
miles, the one that was on the map. So the map from beginning.
Well, not the red line, but from where we're talking about is about 1 mile.
And is that a path that goes up that way? Is there any way to get through it or no?
So it's kind of a little bit, right?
The red line from, I don't know if we can go back to
Can you go
that.
back to that slide? This mouse
Please
is.
stand up.
The red line, you see where the yellow line comes out? The red line
This part right
from
here.
there north, that would be difficult to walk. We haven't really marked that very well. But all the rest of it is really marked well out there. And like I said, it's a footpath. At this point, there are some wet spots that you'll have to cross, and there is a Boy Scout bridge that crosses right pretty much where the blue line ends and the red line picks up. You can see where there's a crossing where the yellow line is. Now that'd be difficult for some people to do. That's basically an old beaver dam and stone wall. So, there hasn't been a lot of rain. You could walk across the box on that area there. So the whole path really is walkable. It's a footpath at this point. What this path does, that's all town-owned property, and up to this point, that really hasn't been accessible to people. And what this path does, even if it's formed now, is open up that whole property in the back, that town-owned property, that really up till now only ATVs have been able to access, and illegally actually. And the town's owned that property for a very long time, so we feel that the residents should be able to use it. It's better for them, and we're trying to provide access to get people out there. It's approximately 1 mile.
What is 1 mile?
We walked it one day. We walked it with the GPS, and say from the beginning of the yellow line all the way down, heading south to the parking lot is a mile, approximately.
And it's
From the ball
probably,
fields to Musicville Road is about a mile.
right, it kind of meanders a little. And I think it's probably a little easier going starting at Musicville.
At this point, you get a lot farther, that's for sure.
Easier as we're working, because we're working on it.
Bob Green. Robin, I have 2 questions for you. One, what was used to determine the cost of this project? Because you're talking roughly about 1% of the total town budget, even though it's reimbursable money, if you want to put it in terms of in that kind of a scope. And 2, where does inland wetlands and planning and zoning figure in all this? Because I know what it takes just to get a ball field approved over here, and you're talking actual intrusion into wetlands in this project.
And Sue might be better to answer it, but part of the beauty of this community is that we have representation from inland wetlands and P&Z on this, and they have been very valuable in guiding us through this process and what needs to be done. We met with Mary Ann last week to talk about, whether there were any issues that we needed to address because of the riparian plan. So we're getting that kind of feedback from committee members, and I think you've been talking to the chairs as well, here and there when we needed to.
We've gone to inland wetlands, we've gone to P&Z, just to present the plan, just to talk about it. We've had great support in inland wetlands and P&Z both. We're obviously we're trying to stay out of wetland areas, because we'd rather not have to go through those hoops, to be honest with you. So we are trying to stay away from the wetlands areas. One, just out of respect for those wetlands areas and how the townspeople feel about those areas. So we really are trying to stay away from those areas now. No doubt there's places that we're going to have to intrude on, and we'll be working with inland wetlands and P&Z, and we've been getting their opinions ahead of time, and there's ways to go about this. I mean, it's a path, there's not going to be any motorized vehicles on it, so you don't have to worry about pollution, runoff, that kind of thing. It's just strictly walking, running, biking. So it's not detrimental to the environment in that way.
As far as the budget number that you're talking about, I think you can't look at it as 1% of the budget, because this is going to be spread out over many, many years. So you're not looking at a $500,000 cost in 1 year. We got this estimate. Sue has done a lot of research, and you can speak to your research, but looking into.
I think it's both. It's mostly a ballpark figure. I mean, we're talking to DOT. Johnny went to a seminar. The common wisdom is $1 million a mile, more or less, depending on how much work and time you do. Again, it depends on the area you're looking at, how many crossings you have, that kind of thing. So, but we are committed to doing most of it with grants, and we're patient. We'll take as long as we have to do that. I've gotten a $50,000 grant. We've gotten a $25,000 grant. The steep grants you can go for $500,000 is the max. So that would fund quite a bit of that path. And there's no match for a steep grant. So there's a lot of paths out there. These kinds of paths are really gaining an awful lot of support at the national and state level. And I think people in Salem are looking for these kinds of things. I mean, the economy's not great. They're going to be looking for things closer to home. And I think they're also expecting a little bit more in quality of life issues and what the town can provide. I think they're very proud of their schools, and they're proud of the services the town does provide. But those are all things that are just limited to certain segments of the population. And I think just from our experience with just opening up rec programs, we're getting a great response to that. People are looking for those kinds of things, and we've had a great response for this path. We really just everybody's really very receptive to the idea, looking forward to it. I mean, it's got lots of benefits to it. You can see it. You can see the marathon going on.
Well, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be a killjoy here. I mean, I come from the St. Louis area, and they're tearing up the old railroad beds, and you can actually travel the old railroad beds all the way down to Kansas City now on a bicycle or hike it, however you want to do it. I think it's a great idea. I was just concerned as to the outlay of the town. You're talking a $600,000 to $800,000 figure, and what, you're just looking for $50,000 tonight? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. But remember, that's $50,000 is going to be reimbursable through the grant that we've already received. So it's 100% reimbursable. What we're looking for is an appropriation so that we can spend that money.
I just didn't want the town to get caught later on with an outlay that it didn't expect. That was my concern here.
Well, we are committed.
I was trying to look down the road here.
Really,
on the
that's
project, so.
something that is written in stone. We don't have very many things written in stone when this town is concerned. But one of them is definitely trying not to have a burden on the taxpayers. That's why we're doing it a little bit at a time with the funds that we get. So it could take a while, but we do not plan on asking the town for $600,000 at all. That's just not on the radar.
Okay, thanks.
And the question I have is, who can actually use that? You had mentioned you can walk it, you can ride bicycles, and did you say horses?
Horses.
Horses?
Yeah. Right now, it's still a footpath, so right now I wouldn't take my bicycle out there.
Well, no,
When it's
but
done, though. Yeah.
well, but I mean, you said you can have horses on it,
Yes.
and you're going to have small kids walking on that path, and you're going to have You can have your elderly walking on that path. Question I have is how wide is the path going to be? So if a horse does come, and you're taking a bunch of kids for a walk in the afternoon.
And I think for some people that will be a concern. We've certainly talked about it. The path is 10 feet wide.
Okay.
That accommodates traffic basically going in two different directions.
If you're familiar with the airline, they allow horses up there, and that's 10 feet wide.
Is it? I
Yeah.
thought it was wider than that.
It's 10
Okay.
feet. Yeah, go ahead.
Norm Ray, again. This statement about excluding motorized vehicles, is that written into your program?
It's actually an ordinance in town, and it will be on the sign. There will be
Oh,
a
yeah.
sign, and it will say, you know, these are the regulations. We're actually already working on the verbiage of that
Yeah.
sign, so.
I like the first part better, it's an ordinance in town.
So we're feeling pretty good about, I mean, you know, there's no way that you can maybe catch everybody, but we're certainly not gonna promote it, that's for sure.
Yeah. And there'll be, certain, you know, at the beginning of the path, the trailheads, there won't be space for them to get through. Not that they're not gonna try some other way. I mean, I've been on the airline and seen that kind of stuff, you know. But the more people that use it, the less that will happen. A horse did come over.
Very bad voice. Ann?
Ann Rowthorne. I've got to say, I have hiked some of that, and it really is beautiful. And I don't know who's developed the trails, but I think one of the Boy Scout troops, and they've done a very nice job. Here's a question. I think Sal answered one piece of it. That's going to be 10 feet wide. What's its surface going to be? I mean, you'll have bridges and stuff like that over streams, but I mean, will it be okay for wheelchairs, for strollers?
We're looking at stone dust right now. But we were talking the other day about there may be some places prone to washout where we'll have to look at other surfaces, and you may see, you know, some surfaces that are not stone dust, but and that's still sort of in discussion. But that's what we're looking at, which is I think what the airline trails.
George Householder. My question is, I know the Salem Town Center has been working in basically the same area. I've been to a couple of the charrettes, and it always seems to focus down toward Musicville, where they're thinking about doing it. Do you see this working in harmony with that? Or are you guys going to build a trail and say, oh, no businesses can come in because we want to keep this, you know, nature? Because it seems like you guys are almost competing for the same pieces of property there.
First of all, I think they'd be very complimentary, and I don't think we'd be, certainly, the only place you could even say that would be the Musicville site, because where the yellow line is, that's set aside for recreation, and you can't really do anything with that anyway,
Right.
without, and the other, probably where the middle third of that, you'd have to go through school property, so you couldn't do anything there with the town center.
Right, but everything over here that you don't see is a lot of wetlands, and then there's wetlands there, so that's
On the
one of the
Musicville
areas
side?
that they're looking at.
They're actually really excited about this. They feel like it will connect the town center. They think it will draw people into the town. They endorse it. They're very much in support.
Okay, I just want to make sure you guys aren't competing for the same.
No, I
Same properties there.
So, I mean, I haven't heard any concerns from the town center committee, and if they have those concerns, then they're more than welcome to come to a meeting of ours and talk it over. We have not heard those concerns from the town center committee at all. So, like I said, the only area that will be there would be the Musicville site, and a good part of that is wet. But to be honest, this path has been in the works for 8 years. And I'm not sure if it is a conflict. I don't think it is, but I'm not sure what you would have us do if it was. So would you ask us to not do it, you know?
Let Dana talk.
Yeah.
This is Dana Abetti, and I'm on the Salem Town Center Committee. First, I want to thank Sue for inviting the Salem Town Center Committee to go on a walk on the trail about a year and a half ago. So we did have an opportunity to walk on the trail, and I went on that walk, and I believe Pastor Tim Dubois did as well. And from what I was able to see, the trail is pretty far back, and we're really looking at more on the front end of the area near 85. So I don't see that there's any conflict. And then also when we've had the charrettes and when we've had the meetings with the townspeople and we listen to what they're looking for, they are looking for walking paths and trails. and that sort of thing to be part of the village center that eventually comes into being. And as Sue said, she's been working on this with her committee for nearly a decade. And I think that the town center committee is going to be looking at something like that as well. These things just move pretty slowly, and I don't see our town center happening, next year, unfortunately. But so anyway, that's my opinion, anyways. That I think it would be a very nice complement to what we're looking to do with the village center.
Bill Weinshanker. I detect a conflict in what the call of the meeting was read as and what your proposal proposed. I believe the call of the meeting talked about a path between the school and the recreation fields, and now you're talking about improvements on Musicvale Road that is not in between those two. I just want to make sure that whatever this town body passes is going to be in agreement with what your plan is. So,
Well, that's.
I don't know whether we can change the call of the meeting.
But we didn't have anything to do with the call of the meeting. I can't speak for how the call of the meeting is.
Actually, Bill, I'll take that as a point of order. I'm the one who put the Salem School in motion only. The call of the meeting just talked about the multi-purpose path.
So it's a conflict between the motion and their proposal. And that motion can be changed.
Yes, it certainly can.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'm 11 Giambra. I haven't heard any estimate about the yearly maintenance costs for this path and who will be paying it.
Well, we don't really have a path yet, so we don't have really an estimate of the path, but that's where we're hoping the Friends of the Path will come in, because many times they'll take care of maintaining the path as far as cutting it back. Grants are available for that also, for maintenance. The airline trail, a lot of the towns that get those grants, those are for maintenance.
Barbara James, I'd like to ask social studies teachers to understand this path completely. For years, I've wanted to bring my social studies classes over to the town hall. There's no way to get here without hiring a bus, and it seems crazy to pay a bus to drive that short distance. So I can see it being used by the school children a lot. And middle school is looking for community service projects, and I see maintenance is a great idea with that.
Now the soccer teams have to take a bus. The school soccer teams have to take a bus from the school to the ball fields. Yeah, they could walk it back. Do we have any questions from the people at home?
As a point of order, would the mover and seconder of the motion consent to a modification so that we'll be talking about the multi-purpose path system between Musicvale Road and the recreation fields on Round Hill Road?
That would be acceptable to me.
Yes.
Okay. So Mrs. Stobie made the motion and Ms. Spade has seconded for consent to that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Bill. Are there any questions or comments from home this evening?
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator, it looks like you have two there.
Good. All right. Could we see the first one then? From George and Beck. Now, without approving any further expenditures, will the money approved for this portion complete anything? How far will $50,000 go? So,
Well, we basically laid out tonight what we plan on doing with that, and that was the 2 crossings, the parking lot, and then start a portion of the path.
okay. Is there another comment from home? Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Well, who is this from? I don't think we're going to get these for $50,000. To the extent that your earlier comments did not address these, what sort of parking area are you talking about at this present time?
I'm not sure if he wants to talk about the whole plan or not. What I can do is, I think he's looking for long-range goals from the looks of it. So I'll take the first one. The trail plan support equestrian use, I think we did deal with that. That's one of the things we would like to have on these trails we'd like to be able to have people use their horses. Now, a mile may not be something that would be that attractive. It may not be worthwhile to have somebody truck their horse down there and go a mile on the trail. So, whether people would use it for that portion of it or not, I kind of doubt it, but we're looking at that. The parking area, it would be able to support closed trailers. The one we're looking at, not a lot of them, but I could see a couple of them in there. The tie-in with the Route 11 Greenway, that is something that is on our radar, actually. We would really like to tie in with the Route 11 Greenway because we're sure that's going to happen. And, we have that on our radar, it depends on, there is a way to get to it, and I'm not going to put it out there, it depends on, property that lies between, our trail and the Route 11 Greenway. They may be open to it, I don't know, but it certainly is a possibility. The Trail Committee is not considering a 501c3 status, but the Friends of the Path, if we get that going, that will definitely be going for a 501c3 status. And the maps, when the town website is up and running, we can make those available. Right. Yep, they'll be available at the town hall.
Okay, any further questions or comments here from the board this evening?
Looks like one more there.
We have a comment from Mr. Ross. What will happen to horse racing?
They will be composted.
On-site count.
On-site count.
If you got a dog, you got to pick up the stuff for the dog. You got a horse, oh well, got a big bag.
Any questions or comments from Will, anything else coming into the home? No. Okay. Well, to sum up briefly, again, it's my understanding that funds must be appropriated because they're not in the current budget. Must be appropriated in order to allow the town to expend up to $50,000. And every dollar that's spent out of the new appropriation will be reimbursed by the state of Connecticut, and that reimbursement has already been approved. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So it's a procedural item that will not have an impact on the town's mill rate. This will be a yes or no vote again. All those in favor will signify when the time comes by saying yes. Those opposed to expending funds and getting the grant will say no. I will now throw it open to our remote participants for a minute from now for a yes or no vote. Please, Mr. Sewell, point of order, perhaps?
Well, no, just a request. Some of you were good enough to stand up, and therefore the people at home could see you when you were asking your question or making your comment. Those of you that were sitting, some of you the camera was able to catch and others not. And so it would really be helpful for those who are not here if you would stand up, say who you are, and then make your comment or question.
And speak up.
And speak up.
And speak up as always, yes. We're trying to be, again, as real time and as friendly as possible. Many of us recognize each other by our voices in town, but I can't say that's true for our vast listening audience. Will, are they coming in?
Yes.
How many do we have?
We have 6.
Okay. I did in fact miscount. Excuse me. There could conceivably be 16 people out there voting this evening. So we'll give a vote for somebody who
There were
voted.
16 who said they were present.
Good. Well, then I've got it right. There are 10 in the room tonight. Okay. You still coming in well?
No.
Okay. I take that to be over a minute at this point. So I'll ask for the vote in the room. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And could I have the tabulation? there again, we have a precise matchup here and at home, so thank you. The motion is carried. Moving on to item number 3, similar to what we just did, but this one has the typical Salem segue. We're going to do a motion to approve this expenditure, but we can't vote on the motion. We're going to discuss it, we're going to understand what the motion is about, but because of the amount of the expenditure, which is $250,000, the final yes or no vote has to be by referendum. And so, in order to discuss, we'll have a motion in a second. Once the discussion has been held, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn that vote to a referendum. It doesn't adjourn the meeting, it just adjourns the vote. And then the final yes or no vote on the motion will be held a week from today here by paper ballot. My understanding is that this is another grant from the state, a fully reimbursable expenditure, this time for certain transfer station improvements. And so at this time, the chair would consider a motion to appropriate and authorize the expenditure of $250,000 for improvements to the Salem transfer station.
So moved as stated.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Is there a second? Seconds are all over the place. Okay, thank you. Would somebody who's been working on this please explain what improvements we're going to get at the transfer station for $250,000?
I can do that. We applied for the steep grant, and what caused us to do this is that the town was cited by DEP sometime ago. Because as you know, the transfer station is on a hillside, right above wetlands, right above a water course, and the containers that we have out there to collect the different kind of waste or recyclables aren't covered. And so snow, rain, moisture gets in these receptacles, and then you've got leaks out there. So one of the things we want to do is put covers on those receptacles. We also wanted to repair the pads that those receptacles sit on. We want to put in safety guards so that there's no risk of someone falling into one of those containers. Right now, we don't have any protection for people out there. And then we also want to resurface the drive in there, and then all the common areas. So again, the steep grant has been awarded already. We have a line item in the capital budget, and what we're going to try to do now is we want to move money into the capital budget, complete this work. We've already got all the estimates that are part of the grant application, and then the state will reimburse as we spend.
Mr. Ross, what's the amount in the budget at the present time?
We put $16,000 in that line item as our share of this project. And so this would be an additional $250,000.
So that anticipates my second question, which you can see coming, and that is what's the estimated expense of the entire project?
That is that is exactly what the estimate went in at. Our $16,000 plus an additional $250,000.
And the grant has been approved by the state?
Yes.
Very good. Any questions or comments from the room on this one? Anything from home? I have a sneaking suspicion this was going to go pretty fast. Okay, thank you. Okay, again, I don't mean to rush anybody. If you have questions or concerns about this particular improvement project, now's the time to raise them and voice them. As much as we would like, I sense, to approve this tonight, we simply cannot. And so, would someone care to make a motion to adjourn the yes or no vote on this question to a referendum to be held between the hours of
6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
6 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Wednesday next, which is the 8th of October, at Salem Town Hall. That's 6 to 8 Eastern Daylight Time. I'm not going to make that mistake again. At 270 Hartford Road, Salem, Connecticut, for a yes or no by paper ballot. And here, a yes vote adjourns the question to the referendum, and no vote leaves it open for further discussion. I'd like those at home to vote yes or no, please, within the next 30 seconds this time. We'll see how fast you can do it. Oh, yeah. Very good. Just to get it in the water. Just to get it. Motion is made by Mr. Bugby, And Barbara James has seconded the motion to adjourn to the referendum. Again, this doesn't adjourn the meeting. And all those at home, go ahead and cast their votes. Has anybody voted, Will?
No.
No. Okay, well, we'll give them a little more time. This is one of those questions we always have. What if you vote no? I guess we just sort of stay here forever and debate the question and never get to vote on it. It's one of the